Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. France's high-speed rail network hit by arson and sabotage ahead of the opening ceremony of the 2024 Paris Olympics. Several Eurostar trains also cancelled. Former U.S. President Barack Obama endorses U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris's bid for the White House as she contests against Republican Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Beijing says relations between China and Japan are at a critical stage as foreign ministers from both countries discuss thorny issues, including Japanese nationals detained in China and import bans. And one of the world's most powerful drug lords, Ismael Almeo Zambada, the leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, has been arrested by U.S. federal agents in Texas. And South African police raid Johannesburg's main prison, seizing contraband items including marijuana, knives, PlayStations and smartphones, warning of a new crackdown on prisoners. Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest from the West African nation of Nigeria, where anger against the Bola Tinubu government is simmering, and citizens are taking inspiration from ongoing protests in East Africa's Kenya and Uganda. The Nigerian government says the military will intervene to prevent any violence at protests by citizens. The military has warned the protests would head off anarchy. Now, this and the armed forces won't allow the nation to spiral out of control. Nigeria's police chief also warned against the protests, blaming self-appointed crusaders and influencers for igniting the protests. Nigerian citizens are mobilizing for protests from the 1st of August against bad governance and economic hardship. The government says these protests could turn violent as they were inspired by events in Kenya, where the youth took to the streets and forced the William Ruto government to scrap tax hikes. In a statement, President Bola Tinubu said that he does not want a Sudan-like situation in Nigeria. He said his government is not afraid of protests, but the damage it would cause to ordinary people. The Nigerian president also met with the traditional rulers to seek their help for countering protests. Earlier this week, Nigerian government held an emergency meeting in response to the nationwide protests. More than 40 cabinet ministers, including the National Security Advisor, attended the meeting. The government has sought more time to end economic hardships. Last week, the president agreed to more than double the monthly minimum wage for federal workers. The government also started delivering truckloads of rice to each state to ease the cost of living pressures. Economic troubles for Nigerian citizens rose exponentially since President Tinubu ended a costly fuel subsidy and liberalized the naira currency in reforms needed to revive the country's economy. Inflation in the country has risen to a 28-year high of 34.2% since the Tinubu government's reforms. The last major protest movement in Nigeria in October of 2020 began over abuses by the SARS anti-robbery police squad, and it grew into the largest anti-government demonstrations in Nigeria's modern history. The police unit was disbanded, but the protests ended in bloodshed. Youth-led protest against the government first started in Kenya, where the campaign is still on against William Ruto. It then inspired youth in Uganda to raise their voice against President Museveni. A crackdown on demonstrators is underway in Kampala too, and now Nigeria, where tensions are simmering as the D-Day approaches. So the youth in Africa clearly want a significant change in their political leadership. Will these protests inspire winds of change in other African nations too? For more on this, we have with us Dr. Chukwudiri Nwangwu, a political analyst and postdoctoral research fellow. He joins us live from Nsukka in Ngunu state of Nigeria. Thank you for being with us, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, the Nigerian military have said that they will intervene if the protests erupt in Nigeria, saying that they would head off anarchy. What are your thoughts on this kind of a reaction by the authorities in Nigeria?
Okay, well, in the first instance, the reaction from the Nigerian Military High Command, represented by its spokesperson, is a clear indication that the government of the day is more or less on a panic mode, given the impending protest that is expected to commence on 1st of August 2024. So the government is on a panic mode, and that in itself has made the military, which is largely a conservative state institution, to come out and make a pronouncement to the effect that if the protest turns violent, that it would intervene. But it is important to point out a few things here. One is that the military, based on extant constitutional provisions, does not have express right, or powers rather, does not have express powers to intervene in civil matters or in domestic matters. The Constitution clearly recognizes that the military is the state institution empowered to ward off issues that border on external aggression, issues that threaten the integrity of the country, especially from the outside, not from within. Civil protest or social movement or civic movement, as is being planned out by a number of personalities, is purely a civil matter which ordinarily should elicit the intervention of the police. The police is the only organization or the institution of the state that is empowered to do so. So the military can only intervene on invitation of the president or his representatives to do so if the police and other paramilitary forces are overwhelmed. So it is not of the military to begin to tell the public or to threaten the protesters, the prospective protesters with an impending intervention.
Right. And Doctor, what are the main grievances that are driving the need for these nationwide protests in Nigeria, and what impact would these protests have on daily life, security, as well as the economy?
Okay, the protest is called the End Bad Governance Protest. It is also called the Days of Rage Protest in certain quarters. So in Nigeria, within the past 2 years or thereabouts of President Bola Tinubu's government, Nigeria has been characterized by a progressive increase of negative growth in all indices, in all known indices in all known economic indices. whether we are talking about inflation, whether we are talking about cost of living, and so on and so forth. They have all been on the rise. Meanwhile, the purchasing power of an average Nigeria has been on the decline, or has rather been on a stagnant position. So given all of this, living in Nigeria has become increasingly more difficult within the past 1 year plus. So in the light of all this, which have also found expression in an environment that is characterized by the implementation of various kinds of neoliberal economic policies, like the removal of fuel subsidy, which was announced on 29th May 2023, that is the day the president was inaugurated. From the fuel subsidy removal to the floating of the local currency known as the naira, amongst other neoliberal policies, all these have further impoverished an average Nigerians. So the true position of things today is that there is hunger in the country, there is bad governance in the country, the standard of living has further worsened, and the cost of living has further increased, thereby making it extremely difficult for an average Nigeria to survive. It will that the minimum wage in Nigeria as of today is 18,000 naira. 18,000 naira, as a matter of fact, is difficult to sustain an average family beyond 1 week in the present economic situation in Nigeria as we have it today. So the key drivers of this policy, the key drivers of this impending protest are varied, but they are also cross-cutting. I've mentioned the issue of petroleum subsidy removal, which has further deepened the poverty in the land, the floating of the local currency, which has also made it difficult even for the benefits, the purported benefits of the fuel subsidy removal to accrue directly to the citizens. Then the high rate of inflation, the high rate of food inflation in the country, the public debt profile of the country, among several other economic issues, which have combined to deepen the poverty level in the country.
Yes. Yes. And Doctor, we know that the Nigerian government is keen to avoid the Kenya-style protests that have been ongoing for more than about 6 weeks. These protests being led by Gen Z. And like in Kenya, Tinubu is blaming an external influence for the unrest. What is your assessment of this?
It's quite unfortunate to hear that external elements are responsible for the impending protest. At least one of the persons who has made that comment is the former aide to former Vice President of Nigeria, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, Daniel Bwara. He insinuated in one of his television appearances that some external actors might be responsible for the impending protest. But the truth of the matter is that there is no basis for externalizing the causes within the country, within the domestic environment of Nigeria. There are 1,001 reasons that one can readily lay one's hands on regarding the, as per the justification for the imminent protest. So the idea of trying to externalize it, either by accusing opposition parties or Mr. Peter Obi of the former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, or indeed other political actors in the country, is more or less a misguided assertion. It's more like a drowning man who is just trying to lay his hand on a crutch, on a straw. But truth be said, within the country, people are dying every day on installment, largely because of their inability to meet their basic necessities of life. Within the country, kidnappers in the northwest, militancy in the south, especially the Niger Delta region, Boko Haram insurgency and the activities of the Islamic State in West Africa are still very much prevalent. These are critical issues of national concern that should elicit the genuine attention of the leaders, and not to begin to trade blame or do a buck passing exercise. It will not address the issue.
Right. Absolutely. Doctor, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your valued insights and assessment.
All right. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Moving on to Kenya now, where crackdown against the protesters continues, who are pressing ahead with their anti-government rallies, which have entered the 6th week. On Thursday, protests again flared up in the capital, Nairobi. Several people attempted to present a petition to the president's office and lay flowers to honor those killed in the protests. People said they were trying to demand justice for those who lost their lives in the protests, and their marches were peaceful. However, many of them were detained, including prominent activists.
It's important for me today to go to the protest in honor of all the young people who have lost their lives unnecessarily, demanding an end to corruption and good governance and a new country to be born. And we want to say that, honestly, it was not in vain. We will not allow that their death be in vain. We will not allow their opposition to dance on their graves. We will not allow our country to ever go back to the realities that you cannot go out to protest for fear that a bullet might take your life.
Now, these protests erupted just a day after President William Ruto addressed the nation. He proposed amendments to anti-corruption and public procurement laws and announced more ministers in his new cabinet. These members also include opposition heavyweights as a part of a broad-based government that Ruto had promised. But activists have criticized the new government. They are disappointed with several reappointments from the previous government, while they have also condemned the opposition members as corrupt.
The president is doing everything in his capability to take this country backwards. This is why we cannot afford to give him more time. He's not interested in fixing the country, in listening to our demands, in advancing our cause, in implementing the Constitution. He's playing outside the Constitution. If we saw the brutality.
Ruto, however, says the new cabinet reflects national unity and will address the demands of the protest movement. He has also promised to investigate the alleged abuses by the police during rallies. However, he has largely defended the police conduct. More than 50 people have been killed and over 400 injured in the protests, which began last month on the 18th of June. At least 700 people have been reportedly arbitrarily detained, and 59 have been abducted or are missing in connection with the protests. The rallies started in protest against the proposed new tax hikes, which were later scrapped due to public anger. But the protesters are now fighting against corruption and poor governance, and many want President Ruto to resign. The protests have also inspired similar rallies in neighboring Uganda and Nigeria in the west. It seems the Gen Z's fight against the authorities is not ending soon. Shifting focus to Zimbabwe, just like the rest of the world, Olympics 2024 is making headlines in the southern African nation, but not for the thrill of it. In Zimbabwe, the Paris Olympics have sparked a controversy. Reports have surfaced that claim the country has sent a bloated delegation to France, accompanying the athletes. Zimbabwe's Olympic contingent consists of 7 athletes, but as per reports, the delegation accompanying them consists of 67 people. These include the country's Vice President, Constantino Chiwenga, his wife and Sports Minister, Kirsty Coventry. Now, the Vice President flew to Paris on a private jet, and as per reports, the luxurious jet for the trip costs $11,000 per hour. Zimbabwe's common people are furious over this. The country's social media is abuzz with reports of the bloated delegation. Many have called it an embarrassment for the nation and a waste of public money. The government has tried to douse the fire. It has provided a breakdown of representatives at the Olympic Games Paris 2024, which is well below the number that has been circulated by Zimbabwe's media. The Zimbabwe Olympic Committee has said only 9 staff, including coaches and officials, travelled to France with the squad ahead of the opening ceremony on Friday. It added that the committee is aware that several other officials are also present in Paris for the Games, but they are not part of Team Zimbabwe delegation. Despite the clarification, the large delegation has raised eyebrows, particularly the presence of Vice President Chiwenga. His attendance at the Games has sparked debate, with some questioning the necessity of his presence. The government spokesperson has said the Vice President is a member of the International Olympic Committee, so he is there in that role, and that the Vice President is there for the official opening and other business, but is not a part of the Olympic delegation. This is not the first time Zimbabwe's Olympic delegation has sparked controversy. During the 2020 Tokyo Olympics as well, Zimbabwe sent a delegation of 18 people, which included just 5 athletes and 13 officials. This had also angered Zimbabwe's sports enthusiasts. Many in Zimbabwe have raised concerns over the disparity between the large number of officials and the small number of athletes. Many are now saying it raises questions about the government's priorities, resource allocation, and extravagance by government officials when the country is seeking drought relief assistance from other countries. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. Artificial intelligence is emerging as a beacon of hope for women in Uganda, in a place where the joy of pregnancy is often overshadowed by limited access to healthcare. An AI-powered ultrasound technology is breaking barriers and offering a glimpse of hope. It is a promise of healthier pregnancies and brighter tomorrows for countless families across the nation. Our report gets you all the details.
Pregnancy is often hailed as one of the most profound and beautiful experiences of life. Despite the long 9 months without seeing their baby, expectant parents embrace the journey with anticipation and love. The bond formed during this period is unparalleled as parents imagine and dream of the life growing within. Thanks to recent technological advancements, expectant mothers can now catch a glimpse of their future child through sonography. These images provide not only a visual connection, but also an assurance that everything is progressing well. It's a beautiful reminder that life in all its miraculous stages continues to flourish. Unfortunately, this incredible technology remains out of reach for many in low and middle-income countries. Trained specialists are scarce, and essential equipment is often found only in urban hospitals. The journey to access these services can be long and costly, leaving many women without the vital care they need. In response to this disparity, artificial intelligence is being harnessed to develop technology. It brings the essential benefits of sonography to women who need it most. Early detection in the first trimester is crucial for identifying abnormalities and preventing stillbirths. Uganda is pioneering this technology with a pilot project that uses AI software to power ultrasound imaging. This project not only scans unborn babies, but also encourages women to seek health services earlier in their pregnancies. This proactive approach is helping reduce the risk of stillbirths and complications, bringing hope to many. The AI-based ultrasound software offers accurate pregnancy dating. It measures the fetus's development, helping determine pregnancy progress. Trained on millions of images, the software can recognize gestational stages and is currently in various testing phases, showing promising early results. The software trial also aims to develop a tool to predict high-risk pregnancies. The software, developed at a hospital in Kampala, Uganda, has sparked great interest among pregnant women. Pregnant mothers are very eager to come for ultrasound scans. The hospital is also seeing overwhelming participation in the study, with many women joining without any hesitation. Typically, a technician is required to perform these scans. However, this technology allows midwives or nurses to conduct the scans by simply swiping an ultrasound probe over the abdomen. This innovation makes it possible to provide care at home, especially in rural areas where access to medical facilities is limited. The journey of pregnancy, with its blend of anticipation and hope, should be supported by access to essential healthcare. Technology like AI-powered ultrasound is a crucial step for health and development of both the mother and the fetus.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again at the same time on Monday. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and goodbye.